And then by 2005, my son had been living with me, but he moved out. My son, his son, and his wife lived in with me, and they moved out, and I had my life back to myself again. And that was when I put all my astrology classes, which were on vinyl, to CDs. Then I went up to the Square. This is tedious, but I just want to run through one once so you got a sense of it. And then you write it down, you see what happened, and then you work on how your understanding was developed inside of Saturn, and you watch the Mars. This slowly comes together, and every time you go through this, you learn a bit better. Every time I teach this, I'm understanding it a bit better. So at the Square, after moving and setting up my astrology classes, I set up my own independent website when they squared. At the opposition, I got a new old car. I published finally my big I Ching book, and my grandson had got in trouble. He moved in with me for a few months. He moved in with me. Then that was a difficult understanding because it worked, it didn't work, it was good, it was bad, and it only lasted a little while. By 2014, I had a fever. My relationship ended, and I did my first webinar in China. By the conjunction, one, I had to get a hearing aid. Two, I had been to China over these 3 years, and when people visited from China, and they helped me, they improved the funding. There was a problem in China, and this person helped me solve it, got some money from China, and I made 5 CDs. I put together the 5 earliest CDs on the harp. So that was a very expansive time. Now I'm just past that, coming up to the Square. So my influence in China, going to China, I was also learning Mandarin. A lot of things changed. That was starting a new cycle. So at this time, I'm 71 and having to start my life over and starting different things was a big change. That's my dream. When you just anchor in the things and you start working on how your understanding is developing and at what age, at what time, what you're doing. And when you start seeing a few different people doing different things in different ways, you start saying, oh, that happened to me. Look what happened to them. How it was differently. Wow, I had a very unique life, but it certainly wasn't mainstream, but those were the things that got my understanding into wanting to learn astrology, and my mysticism and meditation had built up. So these cycles are set up to go across. So you got 60 years. You got most of your life you can put down in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got 48. This goes up to 96. So you got your lifetime on a graph. Okay, now where are we? Just looking at our time. 18. Okay, so the next one we got to do is to the sun. You can do Jupiter to everything and just watch it and see there's a new challenge that comprehends something or something causing a puzzle, hitting this nerve. If you understand right, it's lucky. If you understand wrong, it's not so lucky. So that's the sense of Jupiter's lucky. It's there. No, there's a challenge to seeing things properly, wherever Jupiter is, to assimilating something. If you had a kid, like a kid could come back, knock on the door, and you're having to assimilate. Oh my goodness, I never thought I'd have to deal with this. Things like that. When you have your sun, the sun's your confidence. It's your confidence, it's your purpose in life. So when Jupiter is going to hit your sun, you're going to have your understanding and your outlook enhancing your confidence. So in one way, they're going to be the times when your understanding blossoms the most, when you really have your confidence, you understand your purpose in life, and you're seeing where you're going, and you have a sense, I'm somebody, I'm going somewhere, you want to start something. There's, at the conjunction of Jupiter, opportunities to expand confidence and purpose. It begins. You're starting a new activity based on expanding your confidence. You're seeing a new way. I've got so much, I've got to do more than what I'm doing. And it's like you're waking up and doing things. Now, usually it's considered a positive time, but if someone's in trouble or leading a bad life, their challenges, they could have a lot of misadventures so that they get the right understanding. Some could borrow too much or expend too much or not be responsible. You have to be able to back up your understanding with action and responsibility. Mars and Saturn. So that's the wisdom of Jupiter. But the conjunction of your sun, that's going to happen every 12 years, but it's going to start at different ages. It may start for some person at 2. It may start at 2, at 14, at 26. Someone else, it may start at 9, and then at 17, and then at 25. And you're going to see these really purposeful cycles like we did with Saturn, only this is Jupiter. It's not restrictive. There's too many options. There's deals, there's schemes, there's things to happen, and you have to do I go with it or don't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Because whatever you expand, there's going to be more commitments and more time demands on. Okay, and if you don't expand, you can expand physically in weight. You could expand your complexes. But the beginning of the cycle, you really encourage someone to find themselves to wake up, and it's generally an opportune year to make a new start and make something new happen. If you're going to publish a book, you're going to try and start a business, you get married, do things. This is really get pregnant. These are really good times to start things. That Sun to Jupiter. It depends on the Sun in your natal chart, which is how your Sun works. Someone else could have a totally different Sun and it works differently, but still this idea of expanding your confidence and coming to understand your purpose and your importance and feeling, I understand my importance, I got to do something with this. That's the Jupiter conjunction. And you're going to start moving and going on that. You're going to expand those goals. You're going to try and reach out for them. Or if it's negative, you say, I'm not, why bother doing this? I'm not going to do this. And you're going to be wasting time, wasting energy, and not accomplishing it. And then Saturn will build up on you. Jupiter will start being more and more things being lost because you didn't do it. So it's never exactly this or that. There's too many layers that it affects. Jupiter affects, but the Sun, the conjunction, it starts. It's a start. Let's just see. Do these at the same time, so I don't have to run through the whole thing with mine. So my Jupiter conjunctions, Jupiter to Sun. The first conjunction was 1957-58. That's my first girlfriend, selling magazines, buying my own bike. The second conjunction, I just returned from India and came back to Montreal, came back to Canada after 2 years away. And that was really a whole new beginning. Third conjunction, 81, I got married. The fourth, that was that, so that would have been at 36. At 48, I was involved with some recordings on the Celestial Harp with the music. And I was the editor of the magazine. At the conjunction in 2005, I had a cyst, a growth had grown up on my collarbone. I had to have it operated on because it was growing up. And what happened, there was a cyst that grew, and there was another cyst that grew inside of it that became bigger than that, and they had to cut them out. There was 1 and 2, and they had to cut them out. So it was painful. So that was, but, and my son marries and moved out. So they moved out. So I had a new lease on life after that. The stress and the fact the kids moving in with me probably was part of the cause of involved in the cause of the cyst. But a conjunction, next conjunction, I'm 71. I get a new car. I started studying Mandarin. I finished, Woodhead finished, and I started my English, the series of webinars that I'm doing now. I started on that conjunction. So I run into the next adjustment March 20th, but that's about the time when I finished the whole set of webinars. Actually, yeah, that's about the time I'll finish webinars. So that's just the conjunction, but each one you can see how it starts setting the whole cycle, and then there's adjustments around it. So you expand on your goals, you go on it. And then you get 3 years where you're running on it, then there's some problems or some pressures comes up and you're adjusting it one way. You're going, I'm going to go further, or I have to back it more. I have to extend, I have to add this, I have that. You're going to be extending it more. And as soon as you go through this adjustment, you pass the conjunction half, the activity half, and you're going into the awareness half. You start being aware of how it's affecting others and how you have to adjust to make it have more effect. You're applying your goals towards others, but having to adjust it a little bit so that it's not just you putting it out, it's you seeing how it can be useful to others. And that you extend on those goals until you get to the opposition. And the opposition, there's misunderstandings occur. You're having to adjust your understanding. So really, you pick up an attitude and understanding, and you do things in your life for a certain way for 6 years. You get an idea, you go on it. An idea, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try. You push things out and then say, I'll try it and see what happens. I'll try it and see what happens. That's like from the conjunction to the opposition. Here's an opportunity, I'm going for it. You're pushing to make things happen and see where they go. By the time you're at the opposition, you've set so many things up. Emotions, either too much going on, you can't hold it together, you're not getting the same results from it, something's changed. And you can't keep pushing those old understandings out. And now you have to understand the last 6, you have to be selective. You have to understand what you're getting into before you get into it. So you have to see this could go here or this go there. So I don't want to do anything that's just going to pull me in so many different directions. I don't get anything from it, or don't get scattered. I'm having to adjust my understanding and be more selective in my understanding. So you start selecting which goals are right, where you're supposed to select which ones are right. If you're selecting which ones are wrong, it starts creating a degenerative cycle. A misunderstanding completes that, and the sources of it start going back to each of the earlier times. So the sources are going to be tied up to the earlier points when the cycle began to the sun, but also where Saturn is and where you are at what age and where it's going. So they all, by the time you do each one separately, they start to come together without trying to make them together. I didn't have this all together for many years. I just was doing these and watching them and following through, but it gradually, over 12, 24 years, it started to click in. Now I've been doing astrology for 50 years, 48 years, and 4 Jupiter cycles. And the last 2 I started seeing it much better. Okay. But I was really pumped when I was younger. So, okay, this adjusting the selecting goal, adjusting goals, you're having to choose because some of the goals aren't worth it. Some of the goals took all your energy, you didn't get much from it. What was I doing? So you have to understand before you're getting into it, you're assessing the results of what you're doing rather than just the goals of having to go on this. It's a different attitude. So once you make this adjustment, things go it's a positive adjustment for the next 6 years. But until you make the adjustments, you get caught in problems that you've been setting up for 6 years. But really, I usually, when I see someone's chart, they've got that, I say, well, look, you've been doing things the same way for the last 6 years. You start something, you go on it, you try and see, you start it and you see where it's going to come. You take your chance and it expands and you try and see what the results are. And you can't keep doing that anymore because there's too much waste or misunderstanding. Now you have to understand what's worth going at and what's not before you choose what you're doing. So you start selecting goals, and of course, you're fairly liberal in selecting, but you're moving in that direction. Then the square comes around, and again, some of those goals aren't worth it. Some of the goals you can't maintain it, and there's another adjustment. And here you're refining the goals. I'm going to complete this one. I got to get this one. You're completing it so that you're ready for the next cycle. So you can get the next cycle of, it's been 12 years. By the time you get to the conjunction, it's been 12 years since you've really gone on your initial primary goals. And there's adjustments coming around that. So if we look at my oppositions, at the first opposition, I'm 6, my dad was sick and went bankrupt. The next opposition, that's when I found my girlfriend with my best friend, and they started seeing each other, and that was just before my grad dance. So I successfully graduated from high school, but in a way I was heartbroken with them. Misunderstood, how could they do this? How could this happen? Okay, so in a certain way, it was lucky, because over a few years, I never saw him again. Like, we never saw each other again. But she ended up getting pregnant. She had 2 kids with him, and then once she had the kids, she took off to New York and took his kids, and he never saw his daughters again. And she married someone else, and it was like he had a really difficult life from that. So there was a misunderstanding, and it was like a horrible thing I was mad about and upset about for years. But in the end, when I look back now, I think, whoa, I got saved from a more difficult fate. Okay? So then the conjunction, but that misunderstanding got me leaving home, leaving the country, traveling on the West Coast down to Mexico, going to India, living in India a couple of years. Then I came back in '69, back to Montreal, starting again. And so to the opposition, my girlfriend moved out. So like the first one was my best friend taking off with my girlfriend. And then the next opposition, my girlfriend moved. I was living together for 3 years, and it moved, and she moved out, and I was fairly devastated. But from the ending of that, she was an artist and very beautiful singer, and inspired me very much with her singing. I sang like a frog, but it inspired me to build the celestial harp and do something musical. So I built the musical instrument, and it changed my life. So in a funny way, even though that was a difficult understanding, it opened up something new.